Greetings, Graveyard Disciples, and welcome to another edition of Scared Sheetless.
With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let the show begin.
Not every ghost story's origins takes place in a haunted house. In fact, one of New Hampshire's most famous spiritual tales starts out at sea. While North Carolina may have Blackbeard, we have Mary Wallace, soon to be known in legend as Ocean-born Mary. But keep this in mind as a disclaimer, because it will be important later. There is a catch to this story. I first heard about the legend of Ocean-born Mary in Haunted New Hampshire, a book by Thomas D. Agostino. Most of the information in this video is from his book. But there is some information I gathered from other resources, and I will have those listed in the description below. Let's begin. Our story takes place on July 17th, 1720, as we set out to sea. A ship by the name of the Wolf is heading towards its destination, which is Boston, Massachusetts. James and Elizabeth Wilson are setting sail to the New World, the United States of America. And within the U.S. was where their new land was, their new home in Heineken, New Hampshire. Elizabeth was pregnant, and as the coast of Massachusetts came into view, Elizabeth gave birth. The newborn didn't have a name, though. She was just born, after all. This was about to change as the Wolf was taken hostage by pirates. Their leader, Don Pedro, a ruthless, dark, and handsome pirate, got wind that there was a baby on board as Pedro went over to Elizabeth and James. The pirate who took them hostage asked them what the baby's name was. As Elizabeth said she was just born, there was no name yet. Pedro's demeanor changed from an intimidated pirate to a more kinder approach, and asked if she could name the newborn after his mother Mary. The Wilsons agreed, but Don had one more request before he came back, with gifts for the newborn. He presented Elizabeth with a silk dress and asked when Mary is to wed. He wishes she would wear this dress that he just gave him. Elizabeth told him she would make sure of it. I mean, what you gotta do? Are you gonna lie to a guy who's taking you hostage? Probably not. Probably not a good idea. Pedro left with nobody harmed and everybody's possessions returned. Sadly, it didn't take long after they landed safely in Boston that James died. Nonetheless, Mary grew up to be a tall, records show her at a 6'2", and a beautiful woman. In 1742, Mary got married to Thomas Wallace. Mary honored Don Pedro's wishes by wearing the silk dress at her wedding. Mary and Thomas had 4 sons and a daughter. After the birth of the youngest, Thomas died. As of that time, Don Pedro was retired from his pirate days and decided to settle down in Heineken, New Hampshire himself. Long forgotten about Ocean-born Mary, he decided to go and see what she made herself into. Feeling troubled about her being widowed, he begged her to be his housekeeper and promised to take care of her and her 4 children. Mary obliged, and Don Pedro was a man of his word. Don brought Mary and her children to his grand mansion on 6,000 acres of land. Mary and her children couldn't be happier as they lived in solace for a while. Don, however, being a pirate, had a curse, it seemed, and that curse was about to catch up to him. One night after Mary and her children went to bed, former chums of Don Pedro decided to pay a visit. Sadly, Don was about to come to realize that his babies were not what they seemed. They killed Don by using a pirate's cutlass in the front yard of his home. His former mates must have ran because once Mary got to his room where Don laid with a cutlass hanging out of his chest, the men were already gone. Don, with his final breaths, told Mary to bury his treasure under the hearth with him. Mary, a while before this tragedy happened, saw Don with a retired pirate, a friend of his, carrying a large black trunk out to the orchard. Mary honored Don's request to bury the treasure under the hearth along with Pedro. Mary lived a long and wonderful life right after that. She died in 1814. She only left in body, though, as some say her spirit remains in the house that her and Don Pedro shared. In the early 20th century, the house was open to the general public, and ocean-born Mary made her presence well known after that. A rocking chair would sway swiftly back and forth. Many said that this was Mary's own way of saying the visitors were welcomed. She has also been since near the hearth, as legend says she was always there, maybe making sure Pedro still had his prized treasure. Also, Hans Holzer, known for his book Ghosts of New England, which also has a chapter on ocean-born Mary, Mr. Holzer conducted a seance in the Heinecker home. Here is what Mr. Holzer had to say about the spirit of ocean-born Mary. This is a clip from the Travel Channel show, The Holzer Files.
Mary has eluded us for the moment, but we'll try once more. Perhaps Mary likes being a ghost. One of these days, perhaps, news will be made at ocean-born Mary's house.
Some Henniker residents have said that on every Halloween night, Mary's ghost can be seen coming out of the Henniker Center Cemetery, riding a horse-drawn coach, heading for her home. According to some eyewitnesses who have seen her ghost, they have said they see a beautiful woman who is tall with red hair and green eyes watching over them. However, fellow graveyard disciples, remember that catch I was talking about earlier in this video? Basically the beginning. Here is where the catch is, and I hate to disappoint you, but most of this story is fabricated. A lie. We've been... Well, I'll let this sound clip explain things a little bit better than I could.
It was a ruse, a ploy, a plot, a plan, a charade, a conspiracy, a sham. We've been conned, hoodwinked, bamboozled, flim-flammed, and the wool pulled over our eyes even.
Yeah, kind of a letdown, huh? A lot of it was a lie, but was all of it? No. Let's get to where this story goes from truth to fiction. The last truthful part of this story happens all the way back to where Mary's husband, Thomas, dies. After that, it's all fictional from here. Here's the truth. After Thomas died, Mary went to Rhode Island and stayed there until her death on February 13th, 1814, at the age of 93. She lived quite the life. Her story ends in Rhode Island, but her body was buried in Henniker. But what about the ocean-born Mary house? Why is it called that? The ocean-born Mary house, the one I've been showing, is not her house. It did have connections to her. It was built by her son Robert, who lived there, but Mary never did. I read some articles about this story that said her and Robert didn't like each other, but most reports say she lived out the rest of her 20 years of life in Rhode Island. Wait, you're thinking, 20 years? I thought she was young when Thomas died. I'll get to that in a moment. There's even a few things I read where it said they actually moved Mary's childhood home from Henniker, New Hampshire, to Rhode Island for reasons unknown. Does she have ties to Henniker? Yes, but not to the house that claims her spirit resides, not to the ocean-born Mary house either. Hans Holzer, as well as other paranormalists, may have thought they contacted Mary Wallace, but they're all looking in the wrong house. Reports say Mary was haunting her home in Rhode Island, but that home was burned to the ground in the 1920s and they never rebuilt it. But some say that the house that inhabits the location now may have the actual spirit of ocean-born Mary there. Who knows for sure? So yes, this means Don Pedro never came back, and Don and Mary did live happily ever after in Henniker. That also means there was no treasure, no pirate buried underneath a hearth, or anything like that. Like I said, after Thomas died, that's where the story turns fiction. I just went over what actually happened with Mary Wallace. But who fabricated this story? Who created this legend that some people still willingly buy as truth, even though the evidence to contradict it is out in the open? I showed his picture earlier. This guy, Louis Roy. He was a photographer by trade and a legend fabricator as a side job, it seemed. He purchased the ocean-born Mary house in 1917, heard of the story of Robert's mother, Mary Wallace, and from there created the story of Don Pedro returned to Mary after she had grown up and took care of her and her kids at his big mansion that he built. No, Mary's son Robert built the house, and Roy just spun the rest of Mary's tale, going from where Thomas died. He made it seem like Thomas died when Mary was still young, but Mary and Thomas actually weren't together for almost 50 years. Me and Mary was in her early 70s when Thomas died. So, yeah, when Thomas died, she wasn't this, tall, beautiful redhead with green eyes. She was quite old by this time. From here, she would have moved in with her son William to Rhode Island, but people bought Roy's story as fact for a long time. Roy had his mother, the one you've been seeing in these photographs I've been showing, reenacted older Mary's life in a supposed pirate house where treasure hidden. He would also sell tickets to people to dig up his property, looking for the lost treasure. I'm willing to bet nobody ever found anything but fool's gold. Roy would keep this story going up until his death in 1965. Some reports say he confessed to the fabrication on his deathbed. When I found out that this story was fake, I was disappointed. I mean, New Hampshire has other great ghost legends and haunted locations that should be on every paranormal investigator's list. But the ocean-born Mary story seemed like something to have a fantasy book, which made it even cooler. But it really was fantasy in the end. Even if most of it is made up, Mary Wallace did have an exciting origin story where a ruthless pirate had a change of heart. But that's the end of the ocean-born Mary tale. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as you will see in the description, I do have links to basically the article which I wrote and I've been reading for this. Even though I've been stumbling over my words, I'm sorry, folks. If I'm talking freely like I am right now, I usually do pretty good with not stuttering, but for some odd reason when I read, I tend to trip over my words and stuff like that. So, I don't know, but I can't free roam this or whatever you want to call it because I would be going off at different tangents. I'd be forgetting. It wouldn't be linear. So that's why I write a script, because otherwise I wouldn't be linear with this stuff. And to the folks of Henniker, New Hampshire, I'm sorry I've been butchering the pronunciation of pronunciation, I should say, of your town. I swear I'm New Hampshire born and raised, but for some odd reason, I don't know, my tongue just doesn't want to say the word, just doesn't want to say it right. Maybe I am, I don't know. But anyway, keep it scary, folks, and I'll see you next week.